Welcome to Dr. Sharma Show. I'm your host, Dr. Sharma. I'm double board certified functional nephrologist, and I here bring you latest developments and news about health and health education. So welcome to my show. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Sonza Curtis. She's a functional medicine practitioner and founder of 3D Wellness, a functional medicine practice. She's a trailblazer in women's health with over 30 years of medical experience, bridging East and West, and a physician assistant and naturopathic doctor. She is Amazon's best-selling co-author for No More Band-Aids. So the first woman of color appointed to the advisory board of Menopause Society, and she empowers women to heal from the inside out, honoring menopause as a divine second spring, not an ending, but a beginning. So welcome, Dr. Sonza Curtis, and I'm gonna have a discussion about autoimmune disease. So I'm gonna have her talk more about autoimmune disease and why it occurs and how she's making a difference in impact on her patients' lives. So Dr. Curtis, welcome to Dr. Sharma Show. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, and thank you for having me, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm sure that our viewers will be getting a lot of value from our session today. So tell us more about your background, where you are tuning me here from.
I'm tuning in from Atlanta. I'm right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and like you said, I'm a physician assistant, first trained, and then I went back to school to become a naturopath. I got tired of giving a pill for every ill and wanted patients to take responsibility for their own health. So I've been in practice now. So actually, next week will be 11 years. We've been in the same place. So I'm honored to be here.
Congratulations. So you started your practice 3D Wellness about 11 years ago?
Yes, I started in a consulting practice in 2011, and then I actually did brick and mortar in 2014.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Dr. Curtis, I want to discuss more about autoimmune disease. I know you have a personal story to share with your viewer, if you're okay with that, how you get started with the autoimmune and look deeper into the root cause of autoimmune.
Yes. Well, it actually started with my daughter. When she was in high school, she had all these issues, panic attacks, anxiety, different things, and she had oral allergy syndrome, and we couldn't figure out what was going on with her. So I took her to a dear friend of mine, and he was an allergist and immunologist, and just told her, like, okay, well, there's nothing else we can do. She's allergic to ibuprofen, and she'll have to take Zyrtec for the rest of her life. And so we did that for a while, and I was like, okay, I'm mom, I'm not her practitioner. And so then, but when she became pregnant, after she got married and got pregnant with my first granddaughter, then I was like, no, that's not what we're going to do. And so I checked her, she came back and her TSH was like 3.79. Wow. So for all those that are watching, the range is 0.45 to 4.5. That's like going to Macy's and asking for what a normal women's shoe. It's not such a thing, right? So we did some further studies. I checked her antibodies, and that's when we found out she had Hashimoto's. And then that's when everything with the pieces start coming together. But now she's pregnant. What am I going to do? I can't detox her. I can't do all the things. So we just made some lifestyle changes in her TPO, and that's one of the markers for Hashimoto's, and her antithyroglobulin antibody, another marker, went down just by changing her diet. So that's when really the aha moment where really we knew food was medicine, but I exhibit the results in my own family member where food was medicine.
And that is actually coming out more and more now. We are, now we are looking at the root cause, and everything starts from your gut, and gut is considered to be second brain because everything is linked with the gut. So thank you for sharing that story. It's very powerful story. At the same time, It's also inspirational because you started looking for answers outside the conventional medicine. Being a nephrologist, I have seen all those autoimmune disease patients, and I have dealt with vasculitis, the vascular autoimmune disease. And many of my patients, they actually, ending up with chemo drugs. So in conventional medicine, we give rituximab, we give other highly potent chemo drugs to calm down your inflammation in the body. And what happens is these patients, they end up with 10 different side effects from those medications. And when I found functional medicine, I think that made the entire shift into our thinking as a practitioner, that we have to look deeper into the root cause of the problem rather than just putting the Band-Aid. As you said, you were tired of giving the medicine. So I totally relate with your story. So thank you for sharing. Is your daughter doing better now?
Oh, she's doing fine. We have another granddaughter, and she's, not on any medications, and she's managing her Hashimoto's lifestyle. And so, yeah, she's doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, everything starts from your lifestyle. So when we talk about autoimmune disease, Dr. Curtis, if a patient is coming to you with certain symptoms, what are the alarming symptoms you will be looking at, and how would you start the workup?
Well, the gamut is big because some people come in and just fatigue, especially with thyroid. They can come in with the rash, headaches, it can be a myriad of things, and the thing of it is, it takes a woman about 7 years to be diagnosed because they kind of say she's crazy. Anxiety, Hashimoto's anxiety, I always say they're kissing cousins because I haven't met a Hashimoto's patient that doesn't have a level of anxiety. Even sometimes it can be like a kidney disease. It can be like, high blood pressure. Hair loss is a huge one. Weight gain, irritability, and brain fog. That is the big one. I think every patient has checked that box for brain fog, and that's the biggest one.
So yeah, I feel like I should get checked for autoimmune. Yeah, we all suffer from brain fog, low energy, so very vague symptoms it can be presenting with. So how do you start the workup, and what biomarkers are you looking for?
Well, I start with my basic. First of all, I start with a very intensive history, because the history will lead you to the clue and where you need to start. And I'm dating myself here, but I can remember those old pictures where, the numbers, and it just was like dots and numbers on a page. And as you begin to trace and connect the numbers, you begin to see the picture. Yeah. So that's kind of like what we do in functional medicine with the timeline, as we start to map, the symptoms and the lifestyle and the triggering events and genetics. Then we begin to see the bigger picture and see where we need to start. And as a naturopath, I always start in the gut. And like you said, the gut is the second brain. And what do we do every day? We eat. And so the food that we currently consume nowadays isn't really the food of even, other countries. We have so many genetically modified. Is chicken really chicken? Is it bioengineered? Is it processed? All these things that we have to take in consideration for just something simple as what we do eat, and it's food. Yeah. And especially gluten is a very neurotoxic and neuroinflammatory for autoimmune patients. And so I start with that. And then I do my basic workup. I check your antibodies for an ANA, because sometimes ANA can be positive or negative, and sometimes you can get false positive and negative. And I do my functional workup, looking at your thyroid, looking at your hormones, your inflammatory markers, your CRP, your CMP, your CBC with DIF. You can do a lot of things looking at your white blood cells, your red blood cells, and how they respond to that. I look at your vitamins, because vitamins are key. Vitamin D is an immune modulator, and it's for inflammation. So if you have an autoimmune patient, what are they? They're inflamed, right? And
Yeah.
so then vitamin D really helps with, if checking their vitamin D could be it. And thyroid, zinc. So those are the major things that I really dive into and look to see what's going on. But I always start with gut and lifestyle modifications, because that is making small changes, but big impact.
Right. So starting from, the functional matrix, where we are looking at the patient, not even during their lifetime, but also even when they were conceived. So what happened to their mother? How was the mother's health? And when they were born, how they were born, what trauma they had, any childhood trauma. So all those things are important, as you said. And in conventional medicine, like, we get 10 minutes to, spend with our patient's appointment in clinic, and they don't allow us to go deeper into the history. And the history has a lot of stuff which we can unfold and help us to diagnose that, the right diagnosis, and, put all those dots together, as you mentioned. So that is very, very important for our viewers. And it is important to look at all the biomarkers. You mentioned ANA. ANA is linked with lupus. Then similarly, it's the antibodies which your body is producing against your own cells. That's the autoimmune disease is. So lupus has ANA, ANCA, which is another biomarker we look at for vasculitis. So many of my patients, when they come to me with kidney disease, we see if they have blood in the urine, and if they do, then we look for, ANCA, ANA, and other autoimmune markers to see if that is affecting their kidneys. So very well said. And then we look at the CRP, which is the inflammation, the cytokines, the whole body inflammation is increased. So those are the biomarkers which we look at. Now, lately, I have noticed in my practice, and I'm sure you must have noticed too, that autoimmune diseases, they are rising up, and there more and more people are getting, affected with this autoimmune disease. So what causes this autoimmune disease, and why do you think they are becoming more and more common?
Well, one of the big triggers is viruses. And what did we just come out of? A big pandemic with a huge virus. And if it wasn't the virus, it was the vaccine. So anytime your immune system is uncompromised, and the way I like to explain it to patients is, if a burglar comes into your house and he's wearing a red hat, and that's the alarm system, so the next time that somebody else comes in that's wearing a red hat, that triggers your alarm system to say, we need to attack, just like we did the first time. And so what we find is more and more often that when that person or anybody comes in with the red hat, it attacks that person, and then it becomes more frequent. Right?
Yeah.
So when we look at what we just came out of, not only the virus, stress is a big factor, and look at, the state of the economy right now, it's stress. We're looking at the different, like I mentioned, foods are being bioengineered. Like if you can go to Whole Foods and you can actually look at the bread, and if you read the ingredients, it said bioengineered particles. And this is bread that they make in the store. So this is not bread that they bring in. This is actually bread at the bakery. And Appeal is another, Bill Gates, I think they're making vegetables that are bioengineered. So, and then, then we look at the other toxins. By the time a woman leaves the house and she puts makeup on, she has over 320 toxins, of all of that. So you add that all in combination, and it just becomes a perfect storm. Starts off at a small little snowball, and it becomes an avalanche. And so when your immune system can only take so much before it starts to break.
Yeah, so there are a lot of stressors in our day-to-day living, our lifestyle, and even the chronic stress puts, your immune system under pressure, leaky gut from all these bioengineered food we are eating, the chemicals, fertilizers they are using, even the meat, it's not as our ancestors used to have. So all these things together is a perfect snowstorm, very well described. Now, do you think that these autoimmune diseases, once you diagnose them, and how do you start the treatment protocol for those patients to help them alleviate those side effects or the symptoms of these autoimmune diseases?
Well, first, like I said, to go back to lifestyle, identify some of their life stressors. Like, if, like my daughter, when she was diagnosed, she was pregnant. So that's a big life stressor. And then pregnancy is the biggest time where your autoimmune, okay. I have a question.
Yeah, we'll address that after you finish.
Yes, and so I lost my train of thought. And so that's when your system is at war with itself, because you can't take your mate's kidney, but yet you can have a sperm, and then the baby that's growing inside of you has 23 of his chromosomes, and that's why we have the RH at the end, because that's a big, if it's not compatible, you have a big autoimmune reaction with the RH incompatibility, right? So that's with that. So yeah, once you're diagnosed, I start with lifestyle, and I start with a 30-day gut reset, because gut is where the door opens, but is also where we can close the door by changing that lifestyle and repairing those tight junctures, repairing that gut ecosystem, so now you can flourish and heal. And even they're looking at, like you said, the gut is the second brain, looking at psychobiotics, or they're treating brain, depression and anxiety with probiotics. So by making sure that you're digesting your food, and so the bacteria can't get in there, and so the things can't break down. So I start with those things, and I take baby steps, because if when I first got into this I started in 2014. I brought everything. You can't do nuts, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do nightshades, you can't do that. And then all of a sudden my patients was like, okay, well, bye. So, so you have to start with little small changes. So I start with just gluten, dairy, and added sugar. If you can do those three things, and we can address, lifestyle factors, making sure you're sleeping, your hormones, all those other things, then you will see, like I said, big changes. And then now you can trust me to go further on. So I don't make a huge splash, because our lifestyle it's so convoluted. And then there's 3 stages of autoimmunity. You have one where you just have antibodies, no symptoms. Second is antibodies and symptoms, and the third is antibodies, symptoms, and destruction. So usually you can catch a person between 1 and 2.5. Now I can't make myelin sheath grow back. We haven't figured that out yet. We can't make, cartilage or, but we can repair some of the skin damage from modeling for like psoriasis and different things of that nature. So yes, we can reverse it, or I say stop it where it's at and repair some things, and heal those things. So the earlier, to your point, the earlier you catch it, the better you have at removing.
Yeah. So it prevents the chronic inflammation in the body and chronic damage to the body. So let's address the question we have. Would love to know about cystatin C versus creatinine, and do you follow this? So I think what she's mentioning about these are the biomarkers for actually inflammation in the body, not necessarily for the autoimmune disease. So cystatin C is very, it's a biomarker for early damage, like in acute kidney injury. Did I lose you, Dr. Curtis? I think it's the computer is thinking. But let me answer this question. So cystatin C is a very non-specific biomarker, which we use. I think I lost Dr. Curtis here. So I'm gonna have her join back by inviting her while I'm answering your question. Cystatin C is a very non-specific biomarker which indicates the early inflammatory signs in the body. Yes, it will help us to diagnose the inflammation, but not necessarily what type of autoimmune disease. Welcome back, Dr. Curtis. So I'm just answering the question.
Yeah,
I think we lost you for a second.
there for a moment.
Yeah. So, I was saying that cystatin C is a very non-specific biomarker which is present in the body with the inflammation, and it's the early sign of any inflammation, including the acute kidney injury. And in fact, with the kidney patients, we do look at the cystatin C in the functional medicine world, but not so much in conventional medicine. Creatinine gives us also the clue about where your kidneys stand. So usually, it's a byproduct of what you're eating, especially the protein. So if you have a kidney disease, your creatinine will start rising up. And usually that's the indication that you have kidney problems, but it doesn't tell you why you develop those kidney problems. So that's where the detective work comes, where we are talking to the patient, getting into the history, into functional matrix, and also looking at different biomarkers, including the urine test. If you have blood in the urine, then we look at, Dr. Curtis mentioned before, we look at the ANA, we look at ANCA, which is the anti-neutrophilic cytoplasmic antibodies. So we look at all those markers to see if the antibodies are produced in your body, which is reacting with your own tissue to cause this autoimmune disease. And of course, the thyroid and other problems play a role into autoimmune too. So moving forward, you mentioned that many of these autoimmune diseases, if they are detected early on, then we can actually put patients into remission or even reverse those autoimmune diseases by taking care of, their gut, by giving them a healthy lifestyle. So you usually start from that. And I actually did that elimination diet last year. It's very, very tough. Let me tell you that. And I did it just because, I was launching my program of metabolic reset, where I'm giving that kind of a diet. And of course, it's no joke, and not everybody will be committed to it. And as you said, you're taking small steps. I think that's a win for you. And if we implement those small changes in our diet, and the big ones are gluten, dairy, and what else is there?
I normally do sugar and sometimes corn. Yeah, sugar and corn.
Yes. Yes, so sugar, corn. So I did the soya too. So I took out the eggs also. So it was a complete elimination diet. And when I reintroduced, I found out with the milk, it was actually having a reaction to the brain, not at the gut level, but my brain was very, very foggy. I'm tired, I'm sleepy with the dairy. So dairy is completely out of the picture now. So I'm feeling much better, and I lost weight. So that was the win-win. So everything starts from the gut, and you mentioned that the gut health play a very important role in autoimmune disease. So what is the gut immune connection? Like, can you explain in a layman language, like what connection the gut has with this immunity?
Well, 70 to 85% of our immunity is stored in the gut, and we have the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So basically, there are these little islands of places where the immune system kind of it's like power packs there. And so we need to keep those healthy. So if those, parasites or, undigested food gets in there, then it starts to degrade or destroy the tight junctures. So now that is the protective mechanism where food goes straight into the bloodstream. And so then once that is gone, now that protein of that food goes into the bloodstream, but the bloodstream doesn't recognize it from the LPS, the lipopolysaccharide. So that's that bacteria in the gut. And so when you get too much in there and it gets into the bloodstream, then your body's like, that's when it glitches. You know, you see those things like we just had a glitch earlier. I got kicked out, right? So that's when it's not working. But we did the same thing. I came back out, we got back on track, and now we keep moving. Yeah. So it's the same thing. But I had the choice whether I could log back on or whether I stay off. And so once we start to correct those matters, then we can go on with our life, and that tight juncture is corrected. And then even when our mood, 75 to 85% of our neurotransmitters, so our serotonin, that's our feel good, dopamine, the dopamine is a feel good, our serotonin is a happy one, so those are the things that, that are stored in the gut. And the interesting thing, when you get to the gut, you have a bi-directional communication. So it's not just gut skin, now it's skin gut. And so that's why it's so fascinating and intricate about, our gut health. And it's very important to keep that, because that, that's like I always tell people, that's your CPU unit, that's your CPU of your computer. What you put in is what you're going to get out. And so that's why gut health is really key. I think it says, what do you see? Cystatin C rises first. Would you see cystatin C rise first?
Yeah, I think cystatin C is the inflammatory marker, and it rises first before the creatinine start increasing. Because remember, the creatinine is the indicator of the fibrosis or inflammation in the kidneys. So the vital organs get affected later on, before even we see the other systemic inflammatory changes, right? So first we see cystatin C rise, and then the creatinine comes into picture. Would you agree?
And for me, yes. And for me, sometimes I'll see like another way you can tell, like lifestyle, these bodybuilders and all that, you'll see the creatinine or cystatin, C is normal. Then I'm like, okay, well, you got to adjust your diet before you start damage to your kidneys. And so that's when it's more lifestyle and it's not a true kidney disease.
That is true. And many people who come to me in acute kidney injury, their creatinine is elevated, but that doesn't mean that they are going to stay at that level, and it's completely reversible if they come on early stages and on early part of the injury. Injury could be dehydration, it could be NSAID use. So if we catch that early on, it's completely reversible and preventable disease, right? So now moving on, you touched upon the foods. Is there any particular list beside sugar and gluten and dairy? What foods do you recommend to stay away from for these patients who have autoimmune disease? Is there any go-to list for you?
That's a mouthful. They did recent study. They were showing that the AIP, it's almost like if we have a particular list, then we're still putting everybody in that conventional box. And what I find as a naturopath, that we are taught that, a plant has different meanings and based on, or different properties based on whether it's the root, the stem, or the leaves, or the fruit in it, and when it was planted, how it was harvested. So a lot of times my patients will say, oh, I can't do nightshades, but we come to find out they can have a tomato, but it can't be a hot box tomato. It has to be, a homegrown tomato, because when we pick that tomato is green. That green tomato is in its phytochemical state. So that's the state that it's in when we eat it. Either it's in the green or it's the red, but it's picked in that state, and that's the physiology of that tomato. So now we eat it, and it's that's the greenness is to keep animals away from it so we can have its lifestyle. Yeah. And if we already in the midst of an immune flare, it doesn't take much, and it'll trigger that immune system. So for food with me, I do trial and error with patients, because, if you read all the books that started out with, some of the big autoimmune, no nuts, no grains, that's not a sustainable lifestyle. So I do some food sensitivity testing, and that isn't foolproof, either. But I sit down with my patients and I ask them, like, is this something you eat all the time? If it is, it could be too much of it and we cut back on it. But I try to walk them through different things. And those are my big ones. And then also, once you calm the gut down, like I said, it's that red cap. Once you calm the gut down, then you may not react to everything. So it all depends. It's more individualized, but grains are big. That's a big one with autoimmune, and some patients with nuts, but it's not every nut. It could be some tree nuts and some other stuff. Peanuts are one of my biggest things, and sometimes if they're not organic edamame or soy, because I feel that one of the biggest things is reacted to it because the shell is so soft. So it picks up all the pesticides, and that goes inside the peanut and it goes inside the edamame. But people can, depending on where you're from, like the Asians eat organic soy all the time and they're fine, right? So I think it all depends on a multitude, but gluten, dairy, and added sugar is definitely, and then there's some, some of the nightshades that I do take them away from at the beginning. And the thing of it is, our body is constantly speaking to us. But the question is we have so much noise that we're not listening. So when we start to be aware of what we put in our mouth and that lifestyle changes, we have a tendency to notice, oh yeah, I ate peanuts and my stomach felt weird. So I try to have them tap into that because nobody knows your body like you. I have an hour and a half with you, which is better than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but you have to become the CEO of your health. So you help me heal you. So that's what I tell patients.
Yeah, very well said. And that's how we also do the elimination diet, where we reintroduce one food at a time and see that reaction to the body in the next 72 hours. So just listen to your body, see if anything unusual is happening, any unusual symptoms are happening, then you can pinpoint that particular food. And it is not one size fit all, it's all personalized and everybody is different. So very well said. Now, how do you think are the toxin, stress, or emotional trauma affecting the autoimmune health?
That's a big one. Because when you think, I'll still with the trauma, when you think about trauma, your tissue and has memory, right? Your cells have memory. And so when you have that trauma, again, it just takes a little scratch, and then it everything just comes up, it comes right back up. Almost similar to when you go through menopause, right? And I am in that wonderful menopausal. And thanks to the N factor, I found out that you never get out of menopause. But you have what? You have the osteoclast, when the things start to break down, when you start to lose bone. But toxins are stored in the tissue, the bone, and the fat. So during that time, and when you do weight loss, you start to dump all of that. Yeah. And that is also a triggering fact there, So it's the toxins and is stored there. The trauma is stored in your memory, in the cells, not only in the memory in your mind. So I really work on my patients with mind-body medicine, because you cannot heal the body without addressing the mind and the spirit. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be, you'll have, one flat tire somewhere,
That is true. Yeah, so somebody actually posted just before our Instagram live, somebody posted on social media that they were at the conference, and this is like a longevity, obesity conference, and they found out 60% of women who are obese have some kind of childhood trauma. And that was astonishing, big, significant number.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it is true, false, how valid it is, but yeah, it's amazing to see those things and how what is the impact of your childhood trauma on your adulthood. Yep. So everything goes back to your history.
Yep.
So thank you for sharing that.
And I think they did this study, and it was in Kaiser in California, where they did adverse childhood events and how they were related to just diseases within itself. And I think it was higher than that at least everybody who went through it at least had one adverse childhood event. And the thing of it is, your adverse childhood event may be different from mine. You know, even though a person might have been loved and all of that. And this was in a good community in California. So it wasn't even in, social determinants of health community or other ethnic communities. This was in a good community. And so they just had different feels of neglect, or if they were raised by a nanny or different things, they felt neglected. So what your adverse childhood events adverse childhood events is different, but the impact on our health is great.
Yeah, I think that's what they were referring to, the Kaiser Permanente. They had some studies done on these women. I will go back and look at the text more into from medical literature's perspective and see what study they have done. So that's like eye-opening. But thank you for sharing all that nuggets with our viewers. And I really enjoyed our conversation about autoimmune disease. We have learned a lot. And hopefully you keep embarking on the successful journey of healing your patients from the root cause, and how our viewers can contact you.
They can follow me on Instagram. And that's 3, and that's spelled out, D_wellness_GA. And then the website is 3dwellness.com. And you can follow me there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Curtis, for your time today. You have a wonderful evening.
You too. And thank you for the invite. Have a great one. Thanks.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
You too.